Sometimes it feels like Spock is basically the Anakin Skywalker of Star Trek. Everybody has to be related to him. I'm now rooting for Spock Ferengi granddaughter in the new Starfleet Academy show. This is the review of Champions, and I'm your host, Grandmaster. With me is a powerful panel made up of the finest champions Sukar has to offer. Let me introduce them to you. First up, the original, Mr. Taylor first. How are you this fine evening?
I am great ever since I have been relieved of my pain.
Beautiful face on camera. Merv, how are you, man?
I'm good.
That's good to hear, man. Voice only, we have Lord Deathman here. How are you?
It is agreeable to be here.
I'm not forcing anybody to be here, just to be made sure. I may be the Grandmaster, but you're not prisoners. Well, prisoners with jobs, but that's another discussion. And last but certainly not least, we have Lokismom. How are you?
Well, we're prisoners of love. I'm doing really great.
That's good to hear. There's a lot of love going on here in the podcast of Champions tonight. This is episode 9 of the Star Trek project, where we will be reviewing Star Trek. All of it in order of release, kinda. Today we're going to talk about Star Trek V, The Final Frontier. But before we do that, I want to ask you all to help us out. Like and share this video and subscribe to our channel. Join our forum at Sukar. You can find the link in the description below. And you can click it and become a champion yourself. Oh, that sounds very good. You should try it. We will set up our episodes of the Star Trek project when we do with movies, the way we always do with our movie reviews. 3 rounds, quick thoughts, deep dives, and related things, and re-round off with a rating. So, my question to the big question to the panel when they start to talk about this movie is Star Trek V the reason people talk about odd-numbered Star Trek movies being lesser than the even-numbered one? Yeah, I'm going to throw that out there. And I'm going to start with Taylor, and my little question is, of course, I can skip that because you said so last time. You saw it in the movie theater back then, so what did you think of the movie then? And did you rewatch, and did you like it better?
This movie gets a lot of hate, and I'll be the first to say that it is the least good of the original cast movies, and we'll get into all the reasons for that. But it's not horrible. I mean, when I saw it in a theater, even then, I had some issues with it, but I didn't hate it, and I still don't hate it. I rewatched it last weekend, and I think it's even a little bit better than I had remembered, because I kind of had a dark spot in my memory for this particular movie. It's not terrible, but it is the reason that the odd numbers, for some reason, that myth of the odd numbers got started because of this movie, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so too. But Lokismom, you also saw it in theaters back then. I understand that. Did you rewatch this as well?
Yes, I rewatched it and sort of had forgotten a lot about the plot and everything. For some reason, I don't remember hating it. I probably didn't like it either. I think sort of like with Taylor, it wasn't terrible. But yeah, I mean, rewatching it, it didn't really improve much.
Okay, fair enough. Lord Deathman, I don't think you saw it in the theaters, but do you have do you feel the same as a lot of people do, that it wasn't the best movie in the franchise?
I did not see this entry in the movie theaters. I did catch it on TV. I was fairly young and, let's just say, ill-equipped to kind of handle the bigger ideas that this film tried to go after. And it felt, this is the first Star Trek piece of media that I saw that, one, felt like it missed the mark, where I just actively felt disappointment watching it. Like, it just didn't feel as good as other entries. Even, when I was younger, I felt that way and still feel that way today. And this also was the first Star Trek entry that I saw where the cast really felt like they were older people, right? Like this was the one that really forced me to realize, wow, these people are getting on in years. Before that, though, no, even though they were like older than they were like in the '60s and portraying closer to middle-aged characters, it never felt like that until this particular film. I'm not sure about any curses, like my mind is just trained to ignore all that stuff whenever I'm reading reviews and people go on and on and on about these nonsensical, odd-numbered, whatever arbitrary curses. So I've never kind of picked up into with that kind of stuff. But I will say overall, watching this again recently, I do feel like not that it has improved or that somehow the film got better, but I will say I am able to kind of forgive it some of the inadequacies that I've always felt it had. It was just a little easier to watch, but the film is no better than it was when I originally encountered it. It did not make an improvement. I have improved it by just being able to forgive it for some of its flaws.
Yeah, you're growing older, becoming a little bit more mild, and yeah, that happens. Merv, you actually watched it for the first time, so did you have the same experience as the rest of us watching it for the first time? Did you find it kind of meh?
Yeah, I didn't see this one in theaters. But I actually I don't know if I was a little less meh on initial watch than a lot of people, and I don't know if I went into it with a expecting worse than what I got. Maybe that's the case. But I actually found it rather entertaining. Somewhat enjoyable. Not the best. I think it's safe to say it's not the best Star Trek movie that I've seen. But I came away with it not regretting watching it or anything like that, which I can't say about every movie that I've seen. So, yeah, I actually thought it was, in some respects, a pretty entertaining flick.
Oh, that's good to hear. I actually am on board with most of the panel that it kind of grew on me upon rewatch recently. When I first saw it, I was like the rest. It's definitely not the best movie in the franchise, and it still not is. But yeah, I liked it more when I watched it again recently. Like I say, I get older, a little bit more mild. I just love Star Trek. That's it. We're here because of that, actually. Lokismom, any particular things you really didn't like about this movie, and actually things you do like about this movie?
Yes. Well, to start off with, the special effects were just blah. I mean, it was this was 1989, so I think they could have done better. I mean, the other movies were better. Yeah, it was just the script was off. It was kind of sophomoric. I didn't really like that first open where they're in Yosemite Canyon. Yeah, it was just hokey. It didn't really work, and then they closed with it again, and it still didn't work. But the things I did like about it, well, the one thing particular scene I disliked was when Kirk just kind of goes off on Spock because he didn't shoot Psylocke or whatever his name is, the other Vulcan, and it was out of character for him to be that petty and that simple about it. I don't think Kirk would have actually. He would have been more understanding or whatever. But anyway, what I did like about it though was the character who played. What's his name? I get his name right. It was the character's name. Was it
Psylocke?
Okay. The actor who played it, Lawrence Luckinbill, I thought he did an exceptional job. I thought he really made the character. I think he was the best part of the movie, to tell you the truth. And then there was that one scene where he's regressing McCoy, and then Spock trying to free them, whatever, free their pain. I thought that was really well done. The acting was great and everything, but beyond that, then it just kind of none of it just really worked. It was just like you said. I think the characters were tired. We're getting tired at this point. I like the theme of the movie. I like the idea that here's this Spock's brother comes out of the woodwork. You know, more relatives, as you point out, and they're searching for God. You know, and then each person had. They really didn't show that because I think at the end of the movie where they're on that planet and it's just and everybody's just having this vision of it. So I'm assuming that what was being conveyed there was they're seeing something from their own vision of what paradise should be, which would be hard for another person to see. So all we see is what Kirk sees, and that's just a burnout planet, you know, sort of a lesser Mars or wherever they were at, and he's looking around. What are they seeing? You know, but everybody else is seeing this beautiful vision. Well, I like the idea of that without showing at least some of that, making when there's where the special effects fell apart, they could have made it far more fantastic and really beefed up the picture at that point. But because they didn't do that, yeah, all we were left was with Luckenbill's performance, which, by the way, he is or I think he's dead now, or if he's still alive, I beg his pardon, but he is the son-in-law of Lucy and Desi Arnaz, who were the original producers of Star Trek. I thought that was a nice little roundabout that came out.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Yeah, so I get what you're saying. Because if you look at special effects, you say justifiably so. This movie is from 1989. And I remember going through the theaters in 1991, 2 years later, and I saw Terminator 2, Judgment Day. And if you look at special effects in that movie, that's leaps beyond this movie. Of course, it's a different franchise, different budget. You can compare, and especially in those days, technique progressed rapidly, but still, the difference is huge, in my opinion. So I actually get what you're saying. Taylor, what didn't you really like about this movie? And what did you like? Because you were the most positive of us all.
Yeah, well, I agree with Lokismom, most of her points. Now, William Shatner directed this movie, and he gets a lot of guff because of that, but I don't really think the direction was bad, and I think in some places it was actually quite good. But as Lokismom mentioned, I think the problem is the story. It's just not a very good story. If it were an episode of the original series, it would be, you know, in the lower half of all the episodes, I think. And that's basically what it was. It was, you know, a long episode of the series, and that's fine. They can do it that way. Now, I know, of course, William Shatner is also one of the 3 writers on this, but I don't know how much blame he gets for the weaknesses of the story. Plus, there's editing, and, you know, there's so much that goes into it when all said and done. If you ever read any of Shatner's books, he's actually a very good writer. But everyone has a bad day. Again, the story's just not very good. I agree that Sybok, the actor, Luckenbill, did a fantastic job.
Who is still alive, by the way? He's turning 90 next month.
Oh, okay.
Good for him. Good for him. I liked the concept of he is a Vulcan who has rejected logic and has embraced his emotions, but they didn't. And I'm going to say this several times. They didn't really get into it as much as they should have. And then the whole thing about his power. Now we know how Vulcans have some mental abilities to get into people's minds and stuff. But his power to, you know, relieve them of their pain, but then suddenly they do whatever he tells them to do. Again, they never really explained it exactly. Were they just doing it out of gratitude, or did he actually have some sort of power? Was it all a con? Like at one point, Kirk calls him a con man. They never delved into that. The scene where Bones has his flashback to his father's death was very well done and very powerful and well acted. So that was a plus. there's a lot of humor in this movie, and most of it just did not work for me. And that was my biggest takeaway when I saw it in the theater the first time, was the humor just mostly just fell flat. It wasn't funny. Yeah. The other part, I kind of like the part at the beginning where they were getting into the planet of perpetual peace, where they're in that desert planet. But then they have David Warner, who's a fantastic actor, and they completely wasted him. They did absolutely nothing with him. It was a walk-on role. So another wasted opportunity. Again, the acting again was mostly very good. But again, I just didn't care a whole lot for the story. This whole idea of let's go find God. Okay. And then they go across this thing which no ship has ever gone across before. And okay, they made it through, and then the Klingon follows them and they made it through. So, is it really that hard to get through this thing? I guess not, because they went in and they came back out. And it really wasn't that big of a deal apparently. So again, there was a lot of good thoughts and ideas here that just never got explored. Again, exactly what Cybok's powers are and how they work, and were people actually being controlled, or was he just a con man? They never explored it enough, in my opinion. Again, the cast, I kind of agree. At some points they seem kind of out of it. Now, not the main three, not Kirk, Spock, and Bones, but the others just felt like they were kind of along for the ride, putting in some humor here and there, doing their job. They weren't sleepwalking or anything. They were doing their job, but they just felt like they weren't really a part of everything that was going on.
Yeah, how can you get lost in the forest with a tricorder?
Yeah, exactly. We got GPS.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah, so that was just kind of silly. So again, that's again, can I watch it? Sure, I can watch it. Can I enjoy it? Sure, but it has some failings. Again, the humor, the fact that they had some interesting ideas that they never expanded on, never explored. The being that was trapped there being the climax, that was just kind of okay. That's what happened. It's not God. Why anyone thought God would be in there, I don't know, but whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So again, they did a lot more with Cybok's character. They could have explored more with his power. They could have explored more with this notion of finding God. They could have done more with the planet of perpetual peace and all. Again, there was a lot of things thrown in that were just kind of jumbled together, and they didn't do a whole lot with them. One piece of trivia, since Lokismom brought up some trivia, the Klingon woman was played by Spice Williams, who is a very successful stunt woman, actress, martial artist, bodybuilder, pro wrestler, and among other things, she actually body doubled for Jerry Ryan often on Voyager, and she's married to Denise Crosby, Tasha Yar's brother, they're both grandchildren of Bing Crosby. So her actual official name now is Spice Williams Crosby, but they've been married for like several decades and still married.
No, that's a rare thing nowadays. So we can conclude after Taylor's review that the ideas are there, but the execution is poor. So Merv, Star Trek V, The Final Frontier, the acolyte of the Star Trek universe, or not?
I'm just gonna say not, only because that I didn't want to destroy everything after watching this movie. I didn't want to turn in my fan card after watching this one. So yeah, let me put it this way: if it's the worst thing ever in the Star Trek universe, then I'm looking up as my progression in this entire Star Trek storyline goes along. So yeah.
Okay. Well, anything that stood out for you that you particularly liked about this movie, and of course, are there things you didn't like?
Yeah, I'm gonna just kind of resonate a lot of the same thoughts here. I kind of thinking about it, like this movie really does feel to me like a bit of a jack of all trades, but like a master of none, like that whole thing. where there are moments in this where, especially like, taking it piece by piece, like the beginning with the opening with Cybok in the desert and the guy digging for whatever he was digging for, it struck me immediately as like, oh, is this giving me Western vibes? Because that's immediately what it did. I was like, oh, this is kind of Westerny. Maybe I'll really like this because I'm a big fan of Westerns. And then, within 20 minutes, there was almost nothing Western about it. So we moved on to the next kind of story. And so there's like bits of Western in there. And then there's like a whole bunch of slapstick. Like the comedy was very slapstick. It was, the one that stuck in my brain, because there was a lot of humor in this as well, was, I want to say Scotty, who was like, I know this ship like the back of my hand. And then he trips over something, which is like, I mean, it's a joke you've heard a million times, and it's funny in person, but whenever you're seeing it on a big screen or whatever in a movie, it's like, yeah, okay, we get it. It's just easy to read. Then that's how all the jokes felt. But overall, like this really did just feel like an expansion of like an episode to me. And I feel like, and I don't have data in front of me saying this, but I feel like this kind of a story where the crew meets like a godlike entity or something like that was one that was told a couple of times in the original series. I feel like I've kind of seen this story before. So that it's not like strange to me that they would take that idea and like expand it into a film, because I feel like that's the logical, end game for that. Again, I just feel like they didn't do quite enough with all the pieces to make it a really memorable experience. They just kind of dipped their toes in a whole bunch of areas and then never really like came around to any particular one. Like if they would have taken Cybok as the kind of cult leader that he seemed to be and really focused on that and made it kind of serious instead of having them basically side with him and support him in the end, like there's a bunch of different ways it could have went that would have made it much more dramatically interesting, and it just wound up being like meh. Again, like you said, Grant, like, was it meh? It was just kind of middle of the road when all things are said and done. I did still enjoy it. I like, again, it's, I'd easily put it at the bottom of the movie list for sure. Nowhere near like Wrath of Khan or even Search for Spock, but I still, didn't come away from it hating everything, Star Trek related. So, and again, I the Kirk, Spock, McCoy bits were always good. I just think those actors really just know those characters so well. In the Uhura Scotty love interest, I don't know when that came around. Did that just start in this movie? They just threw that together, that they were a couple, because I didn't see that coming. And it was kind of a little bit strange, but then a little bit like, okay, well, that's fine. It was mostly comedic anyway. And I don't even remember a scene with Chekhov or Sulu in this. Like, they just really felt like wallflowers in this for me. Like, I'm sure they were in it, and I'm sure they had scenes and dialogue, but I cannot think of a single one right now. So they were immediately forgettable for me in this one, unfortunately, because I like both those characters. And there were several spots where, at the very least, the cinematography was really memorable to me. The one I mentioned already, the opening scene with Cybok, I thought that looked fantastic, and I thought like just the camera angles and the lighting and everything was awesome. The scene with Uhura dancing to distract guards or something, I can't remember the details, but I thought that looked fantastic. And whenever they finally got to the God Planet, I thought all that looked pretty good. It wasn't necessarily all, CGI or special effects or anything, but I just thought it, like the angles and the way they used silhouettes of characters, like whenever they're coming around the desert looking rocks and stuff like that, like you can make out the figure of the person, but you can't make out who it is necessarily, or like the details. And I just really thought like the cinematography there was actually quite good. But overall, yeah, it's kind of a middling, movie for sure, and on the lower end of Star Trek movies, but still I had a good time watching it.
That's good to hear. Lokismom, you had a follow-up for Taylor. Forgive me for not going to you first before I went to Merv.
Oh, that's okay. No, I was just going to dovetail what Taylor was saying about, and then Merv again, about the Great Barrier that to me, that I think that just kind of irked me more than anything, because like I said, in 1989 they knew back then that there was in all likelihood a black hole at the center of at the galaxy, and I think since then that's been confirmed. But it would have been, instead of calling it the Great Barrier, I kept thinking the Great Barrier Reef when they kept using that horrible, when what it is an event horizon. And I think they didn't pay attention to the science of what was current in 1989 or what, so that even as it come out, it was way dated. It was like something they would have said back in the 1950s, the Great Barrier and all that. And it just irked me. They could have done better.
Yeah, I agree. And now I'm going to row my boat to Lord Deathman, so he can give his deep dive on Star Trek V: The Final Frontier. Anything you liked about this movie?
Sure, I think there are a couple of things to like about this film, and people tend to disagree with me on the things that I like about the film, but obviously McCoy's pain revelation is probably the standout dramatic piece of the film, which I think most people can agree on. I kind of like the bookends of the film too, with the camping scene where you have Spock, McCoy, and Captain Kirk sort of around that campfire, talking a bit more about aging and their mortality. And again, this is the first Star Trek film that I saw where it really felt like, wow, these these guys are slowing down. And at the time in popular media, what was going on, I think in the theaters, you had Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, the Batman film had just come out, Ghostbusters 2, Back to the Future 2. I think we were somewhere in the second or third Lethal Weapon. So movies were kind of making this quantum leap in terms of the amount of action and entertainment for these kinds of franchises. But Star Trek felt like it had somehow been left behind. It didn't quite make the same leap as what was going on in the movies and TV as far as science fiction and action films went. So it was a little bit of a disappointment for me. I never saw it in the theater, and I could have seen. I went to see Batman, I think, that year in the theater. So it just felt like a film that I didn't need to see. I didn't catch it until maybe a year or so later when it came to cable. It just didn't seem like an essential entry. But yeah, I did like Kirk. I liked Cybok's sacrifice. I think that's also another standout piece that people don't really talk about in terms of the film, when Cybok finally comes around and challenges and sacrifices himself to this kind of God construct. But that is really all there is for me to kind of point out that I liked about the film. Beyond that, there are quite a few shortcomings. I think people have already noted that characters like Sulu, Chekhov, they fade to the background. It really feels like those actors kind of came along for a paycheck, or they had some obligation to round out the cast and the crew to be in there. So not a lot of substantial work beyond the big three and Cybok to do dramatically, I think, in this film. As Taylor points out, David Warner, huge waste of an incredible actor who they could have gotten to do any number of things to help improve that film. But nothing really came of his appearance in the film. I guess, like I said, I watch it today. It's still not a great film, but I am able to kind of forgive it some of its flaws. I've been to more than one convention where William Shatner kind of talks a little bit to bring in some trivia into this, the same way Taylor did, and Lokismom. I've literally heard in person William Shatner talk about his inspiration for this film and how it was really about how, I guess at the time, televangelism was a big thing in American culture. And there were a lot of them on the rise at the time. And Shatner was having a huge problem with this because he thought that those people were just charlatans who were preying on people's faith in order to exploit them for money. And I think that this was how the idea of the crew of the Enterprise somehow confronting a false godlike figure kind of came into being because of his general skepticism. And if you know William Shatner as a person, he is a searcher. He is much more of a skeptic when it comes to things, and it shows through in this film. He really wanted to challenge the ideas of faith, religion, God. So he's working something out in this film, and I think it's very obvious to see that when you understand who he is as a person, and you kind of compare that to what's going on in the film. The problem is that he doesn't follow through on these ideas. It's really, for me, a pretty superficial exploration of the idea of faith, and it has a very simplistic sort of ending to that confrontation. We never learn much about the alien who is pretending to be God. We don't find out much about that being. The whole process of people being converted to this religion seems to happen instantaneously, except in the case of McCoy, who I think they tried to write out a piece that would kind of explain how you get converted. But for everyone else, it's really perfunctory. So I think the biggest problem with this film is its lack of follow through on some of the enormous ideas that it kind of brings forth. And frankly, that's just a shortcoming, I think, on William Shatner's part in terms of him just developing as a writer, director, creative force at that time.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, there's not much I can add to this. You guys have unpacked this movie quite beautifully. So let's move on to our rating section. And I'm going to start with you, Merv. I'm going to start with you. What number would you give Star Trek V, The Final Frontier?
I'll end this with just saying that this did bring back some random memory. I must have walked through my grandparents' living room while they were ending this movie because I remembered a bit of the conversation between Kirk and God. So this brought back some weird memories of from 1992 or something. So on that note, I'll give it a 6.5 out of 10.
Okay, fair. Lord Devman?
Yep, for me, this movie sort of is the exact middle of the road of Star Trek. So if someone who isn't too familiar with Star Trek and they ask you about this film, you can just without reservation kind of give it a 5. It has all of the hallmarks of a Star Trek film, but doesn't quite rise to being one of the great entries in the series.
Okay, Taylor?
Yeah, it's a fun movie. It just doesn't reach its potential, not to the level of most other Star Trek stuff. It is not the acolyte of Star Trek. We will be doing that when we get to Discovery.
We're still 4 years away, and Taylor's already sharpening his knife.
But for this movie, I'll give it a 7 out of 10.
Okay, Lokismom?
6.
I go along with that. I also give it a 6 out of 10. I think it's a fine movie, enjoyable watch, but it's not great. And let's just say if somebody were to invite me, let's watch a Star Trek movie, I would not pick this one. It's as simple as that. I would pick 5, 6, 7 others first before I thought about this one. But anyway, that will conclude this month's episode of the Star Trek Project. We hope you have enjoyed our discussion today. If you did, you can help us out. Like and share this review and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you really want more of us, join us at our forum at sakar.freeforums.net. The link is in the description below. Episode 10 of the Star Trek Project, we will be discussing Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, the last of the original series movies. check out our review series for The Rings of Power, currently running on our channel, and soon we will be starting another review series for Agatha All Along. So we are busy, but we like it. For now, I thank you all, also on behalf of our champions, and wish you to live long and prosper. Bye.